All right. Hello, everyone. So, this week's free resources are links to some artists, kind of. So, there's some specific screen printing processes that I'm going to show you. So, there's a link for some uh, artists who do all sorts of types of printing, whether it be screen printing or other ways of printing. I'm not going to list them all off, there's a lot. And then the other link is going to be for just specifically Linocut printing. It's very cool, very easy to do. You just, most people use it's kind of like printing with linoleum. If you ever took an art class in high school, I think they have you do that. Um, so it's kind of like that, except you can use plywood. So you just go to the store and buy some plywood, and then you carve out whatever isn't going to print, and then you can ink up your plywood, and then you print with it. It'll show you that, like, that website will show you the whole process, and you can also click the portfolio tab at the top, and it'll show you a whole bunch of like images that people have done with Linocut. Very cool. It's a very awesome process. But today, for prompt number 52, which is anything I want, I'm going to show you how to do a monoprint. Um, and a monoprint is a print that you only are able to do once. So even if you try to recreate it and use the same colors, it's never going to be the same. So after the demonstration of it, I will give you numerous possibilities as to how you could enact it and do it at home. Today I am using watercolor, and I have an interesting setup that I just made myself. I have like this top of a box. That's my flat thing that I'm using. And then I have this plasticky paper that I had cut this is what I'm going to be using to print with. So this was just handmade by me. It's not like I'm an expert in it or anything. And I'll quick show you, I did some already. And there's all sorts of possibilities with this kind of printing. So one of the things I did is I printed and then I colored over the top to make images. So like I printed and then I took some of my Prismacolor pencils and I colored over the top to create a space scene. This one I printed and I'm leaving. I'm not adding anything to it. I think it's beautiful just the way it is. This one I printed and I turned it into a fish. I really like that one. This was the first one I printed and I turned it into a sunset on the water. There's a boat in the water. And then these next couple I didn't do anything with. I had printed them and I didn't know what to do with them, so I'm just leaving them as is. There's different things that I did for each of these, so these ones are just kind of like remnants, so I'm not going to show you those. But there's different things you can do to get different effects, and with monoprinting, after it dries, you can always do it again, and you can put something over the top. You could also do you can block things by just sticking a shape that's cut out of a sheet of paper onto your surface and then printing, and then peel that off and it'll leave that impression. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm only going to be running any print once. And as I think I said, I'm using watercolor. So I pre-wet all of my watercolors. It's just a watercolor. It's a cheap watercolor palette that I have. So I think I'm gonna aim for a sunset again. So here's my surface. I'm gonna put the camera down so you might be able to see it, you might not be able to. Um, but we'll see what happens. And I'm gonna try to create a sunset with this. So with this being plastic and me using watercolor, my watercolors are really gonna beat up because it's very wet. So I'm gonna start with my yellow. That's where the sun goes, and I'm going to do a little bit down here because why not? Go out a little bit. My next color would be orange for the top, so I'll go orange. Kind of go all around with it. And then red. And I'm all right with my colors kind of blending into each other, so this is what I'm doing. And then is this purple? I think this is purple. So I'm going to go on my outer edges with that. And then we're going to get to the bottom part because I want this to kind of be green and blue to mimic either water or I don't really know what I want it to mimic yet. So I'm just kind of winging it. Want to make a nice, pretty, colorful kind of thing, but I'm using blue and green as my bottom. Don't really know the aim yet. And I think I might actually use this purple down here too, just to kind of tie it all together. We'll do that, sure, why not? Okay, so there I have my color on there. And then with this, instead of like picking it up and flipping it onto my paper, because it's so wet using watercolor, I am just gonna set my paper on top. So I'm just gonna kind of try to center it perfect, and then I'm just going to flatten it down and help it pick up all of that color. And with this, I have to be conscious of how I'm going to pick it up because it is very watery down there. And when you pick up paper off of something wet, whatever point of your paper touches it last is normally where the water is going to go down to. So like if I went like this and picked it up from both sides like that, a lot of the color is going to sink to the middle and it's going to create a line. So I might take it off like this instead, and then it kind of swoops over to that side. So this is what it ended up looking like. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if I can really hold it up because it might drip, but it looks pretty neat. I'm digging it. Looks really cool actually. I like that a lot. And I actually have a lot of color left on there, so I might just put another sheet of paper onto it and see what I get off of it, I guess. So I'll do that. So my sheet of paper is dry. A lot of times with printing, not with screen printing though, when you pull proofs, they don't have you wet your paper, but with a lot of other types of printing, like if you etch a copper plate and you print that, you're always going to get your paper wet. You let your paper sit in a water bath and you pull it out, and that is what you end up printing on. But you need a press for that to roll it through. So yeah, with this process, you are the press because you're the one pushing your paper and your plate or like your printing object together. So there's a couple different ways that you can not a lot of color came off on that one. It still looks interesting, so I might still do something with it, but so there's a couple different ways that you can create a platform for you to print off of. literally anything that is hard and will be water resistant for the most part should work. So let's say, so you'd have to be very careful with this, but you could go so far as taking glass out of a picture frame. And then if you're using the method that I just used now, which you'd be using watercolor, and you set your paper on top, that would be fine. Just be careful not to cut your fingers. So you could take the glass out, put your color on there, and then just place your paper on top, rub it around, make sure all of the paper just soaks up the water, and then you peel it off, and there's your monoprint. You, like I said, you can go back and you, after it's dry, you can print more, or you can go in with a pen or a pencil, colored pencil, and draw whatever you want on it. But honestly, if I tried to do this sunset again, it wouldn't work and it wouldn't look the same. Because that's just how monoprinting works. So you can't really pull a series of prints, which is interesting. So I'm trying to think of other ways that you can do this. So I used a sheet of plastic. If you have a plastic folder, you could do it that way. You could also put a plastic bag over a hard surface, and you could do it that way. You could, I mean, honestly, anything that you could paint onto that is water resistant that you can place paper onto then after you paint, it realistically should work. You don't need to have like a plexiglass plate that you use specifically for printing or anything like that. That's what all of the professionals use. You know, they have like their plexiglass plates that they keep all nice and clean. So yeah, it's really easy to do and it's fun, and you're always going to get something different and something random, and it's just fun. So that's how you can create a monoprint. You can also create some other techniques. So if you wanted to, you could still get your paper wet and then put it on there. It does pick up more color, but the thing is if you get it wet, it also mutes your color. So this one is one that I had sprayed and then set down, and you can see it's more like it kind of created a wash instead of a print. So this one is, it's not much of a print. It's more of a wash. But it still works, and you can get different looks. Like that would be a good one where like maybe I'd be more interested in printing on it again, and that time I would pull a dry print, since I did a wet one the first time and it just looks more muted. So another thing you can use besides watercolor is you could use markers. You could use, but with markers, I would definitely recommend getting your paper wet, or just spraying some droplets of water from like a spray bottle onto the plastic surface that you're doing marker with, or doing with marker. Yeah, whatever. Spray some water on it, make it a little bit more liquidy because markers tend to dry quickly. So you might need to add some water to it to actually pick it up with a dry piece of paper if you're not going to get your paper wet. Another thing you could do is you could add a little bit of water to acrylic paint. Now, acrylic paint, depending on how watery you make it, you might actually be able to, instead, after you apply it to your plate that you make, you might actually be able to just pick it up and press it down on your sheet of paper and then rub it all around to get your print off of there instead of putting it paper down onto the plate. it might be better. And there's also, I mean, yeah, you can add things in there. I wouldn't recommend it if you use glass to add anything in there because any inconsistency of pressure on glass could create a crack and then break it. So I definitely wouldn't recommend it if you're using glass, but if you're using like a plastic folder or something, you could throw like string like onto your print before you press it onto the paper, and then it'll leave a negative outline of whatever you throw on there. So you could do string, you could cut out shapes of paper and stick it on there, just whatever you want, you know. It's pretty wide open as far as things that you can use when making monoprints. So you can get really creative with this one. So thought it was a good one to do for prompt number 52, anything you want, because you can do literally anything you want with this, and you can use whatever you want, and you can use any medium, you can use any kind of paper, you can use anything for your plate. Like it all works out really well. So have fun creating. Enjoy. Oh, I just hit my elbow. Okay, bye.